All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another session on our 2614 revision classes. And obviously, congratulations to the Box for winning the World Cup. Right now, let's go to tools and menus and toolbars. That is what we want to look at today, and we also want to look at containers. So this is what your assignment 3 should have been about. But unfortunately, it did not materialize because there were a lot of errors and issues with the assignment. But you can still go through the solution that we have, as much as the questions had a few issues with regard to the version of the assignment that we had. If you use the actual project, it will still help you though to understand these concepts. Now, to do that, let's look at a few questions and then briefly discuss the concepts that are involved here, and then we can see how much ground we can cover in the next 50 or so minutes. So 5.1 says, explain 2 similarities and 3 differences between a QMap and a QList. When we talk about containers, these are the containers we are referring to. We have used a Q list before. We have also used a Q string list. We just haven't used a Q map because we should have used it in our 3rd assignment. So normally you focus on the container that you used in your assignment. And my assumption is you had the Q map in your 3rd assignment. If not, I'll check. But I think it was the Q map in your solution. So you have to understand at a very basic level how to use a QMap and how to use a QList, of which a QList is not difficult because we have already used it when we were doing inheritance and looping and doing all those things. That was a QList. Now we want to talk about what is a QMap and how do you use a QMap. Then 5.2 says, write code to create a QMap object with QString as keys and foo as values. So these 2 questions are about your knowledge on containers. And then 5.3 now talks about how to build menus and toolbars. It so happens that they normally ask these on the same question, but that can also change. You just have to understand how this works. So let's quickly look at containers, and then we can come back and look at this question. So whenever you talk about a Q list, we are saying that a Q list is array-based and it is optimized for index-based random access. So in other words, whenever you're using a Q list, it's when we say it's optimized for index-based lookups, we are saying that is very ideal if you want to be able to find your data inside your container using an index. So you're going to be using an index to locate something that is in your map, or with a Q list, you can also use the .at function and you specify the index. So it is optimized for index-based lookups. And number 2, there's no sorting in a Q list. Items are inserted in the order that you insert them. So if you use the append function, obviously whatever you put in your list goes at the end. If you use the insert function, you can then specify where exactly you want to insert your item, the index where you want to go and put it. So your Q list is very simple. We have, for the most part, used the append function, or you can just use these operators to insert something into a list. So that is it about a Q list so far. And then a Q map is an ordered associative container that stores key value pairs, which means everything that is stored in a QMap is a pair, which is composed of a key and a value. So what happens in a QMap is if you want to store objects of type account, right? For instance, because we used a class called account in our previous classes, you know that if it's a Q list, you simply just go Q list like this. Let's just remove that. If it's a Q list, you simply go Q list, and then you specify that it's of type account like that, and then you can put your items inside your list. Now, if it's a QMap, you are still going to store accounts, so you'd go QMap like that, and then you specify that because each item in your QMap is a pair. There are 2 items involved, the key and the value. And for your keys, that is where you can use your usual primitive types like int, you can use a Q string, you can use a double and so on. But normally you'd see that in most cases, we just use an integer, a Q string, and sometimes a QDet, but not very often. But it's also possible. So I can say if I want to store accounts, how do I want to uniquely identify each account? I can say, well, let's use the account number, which is a Q string, which means each item in a QMap is going to be composed of a key, which is a Q string, and a value, which is the actual account pointer. So my Q map would be like that. So you see that I am still storing accounts, but only that I am using a string as a key and then the actual account is the value. Whereas in a queue list, I just store the values. And the only way to access items in a queue list is to use the index. Whereas in a queue map, you can use a key. So it is designed for fast lookups using a key for the associated value, which means if I want to find an account with a given account number, I don't have to loop a queue list to try and find that account. If I'm using a queue map, all I need to do is to use a function that we'll talk about, which gives you the value of that key, right? So this one is designed for key-based lookups, right? This one is designed for key-based lookups, whereas a queue list is designed for index-based lookups. Now, the last point is it keeps items sorted using key for fast searching. So one of the main differences between a queue list and a queue map is that in a queue map, items are sorted by default, which means you don't have to do anything to sort those items. As you insert your items into the queue map, your compiler sorts them for you. So items are sorted by default, and they are sorted according to the key. That is what we basically need to know about a queue list and a queue map. So let's talk about if you are using a queue map, how do you define a queue map? So we said the format is to specify a key and a value. And what you're dealing with here are the types. What type is your key and what type is your value, right? So if my type is a Q string, then I'll put Q string. And if my type is a value, then I'll put the actual value that I'm storing. Like in this example here, this is supposed to be Q string and the values were pointers of type order. So let's go and look at functions that are common on a queue map, those that you would use more often. The first two functions I want you guys to know about is the insert and insert multi-function. So these two functions are used for inserting into a queue map. The only difference being that the insert function does not allow you to insert duplicate items, which means as long as you keep inserting an item with the same key, this function keeps overwriting that value, which means you only have one item per key. But if you want to allow having multiple items with the same key, then when you insert your items into your map, you use the insert multi function, which allows you to have multiple items with the same key. So that is how you insert items into a queue map. Now, another function that is also important is the values function, which returns all your values for a given key. So if you so the values function returns a queue list containing all values on the map in ascending order if their keys let me restart. It returns a queue list containing all values of the map in ascending order of their keys, right? So that is why we said they are sorted, all items in a queue map are sorted by the key. If the key is specified, values are returned from the most recent to the least recent item. So you can just use the values function without specifying a key, which means it will return all the values in your queue map, but as a queue list, which means if I have a queue list of type, if I have a queue map of type account, and then I call the dot values function, it will return a queue list of all accounts in that queue map. So the values function gives you a queue list. This is important, especially if we want to loop through the queue map. We need to get the values first, which is a queue list, then we go through the queue list. So take note of that. You can also use the values function to specify only items with the given key. So if you say values and you specify the key, then what you get is items for that key. So in the event that you were, let's say you had used the Q map, the insert multifunction, it means that you've got multiple items with the same key, right? So if you then say values and then you specify a key, you get all those items with the given key, but in the now there's no ascending or descending order because you are getting items with the same key, which means that you simply get them from the first one that you inserted to the last one that you also inserted. Another function that we also did not put here is the value function, which is also very important. So values allows you to get multiple items, but you can also use what is called the value function, which also takes a key and it returns the value of your key. And if you had stored multiple items per key, I think it will return the most recent one first. Right, so those are the functions you need to know in terms of how to insert data into your QMap and how to get or retrieve your data from a QMap. And then we also have the remove function, which removes all items with the given key, and it returns the number of items removed, which means if we didn't find any item with that key, this function simply returns 0. But if we find at least one, then it returns the number of items it removes. But one of the most important things you should remember when it comes to the remove function is it does not delete the pointer. It simply removes it from the Q map, right? So the clear function, same as in a Q list, removes all items from the map. It does not delete the actual items in the case of pointers. So the clear function will just remove all items. It will clear your Q map, which means it just removes everything, but it does not delete the pointer. So you cannot rely on using these functions to delete pointers. You can only use this to remove those pointers from the QMap. If you want to delete these pointers, that is where you use the QDeleteAll function that we discussed in our previous class. So these are the basics of containers that we wanted to briefly discuss in terms of the containers that you guys must know. So these are the basic functions, and in this case, we have only focused on a QMap versus a Q list. Now let's go back to that question, and let's look at what the question was. So the first question was, explain 2 similarities and 3 differences between a QMap and a Q list. We have just covered this, didn't we? So when you talk about the similarities, what are the similarities between a Q list and a QMap? From what we have just discussed here. So if we go back, okay, let's just summarize this. So you can now just give any similarities you want from what we've discussed. For instance, I can say they both allow random access, and I can also mention that they can also be used to store items of different types. In other words, I can say they are generic. You can store any value inside a Q list or a QMap. It can be a Q list, it can be accounts, variables, it can be anything, right? So they are all generic containers. And in terms of the differences, one of the basic differences we mentioned was that you can sort in a QMap, whereas in a Q list, there is no sorting involved. Another obvious difference between a QMap and a Q list is that a Q list only stores single items, whereas a QMap stores items as key value pairs. You guys will go into the third one, right? I think that's fair. 5.2, write the code to create a QMap with QString as keys and foo as values. That is easy because we've just said you do a QMap, your key is of type QString and your values is of type foo, like that. And you can give it any name you want to give it. That is how you would create a QMap where your key is a QString and your value is foo, right? So containers are not very difficult. It's mostly theoretical and also being able to just understand the basic functions and when you would use what functions. Or sometimes they can ask you quite tricky questions which test your knowledge on how these functions work, all right? So now 5.3 is now talking about menus and toolbars, being able to build a menu and a toolbar. So you know that from our previous classes, actually from our previous class, if we want to build a graphical user interface, we always use the Q dialog, right? And then we talked about how to build a user interface from a Q dialog. Another class you can also use to create a user interface is Q main window. Q main window. Now, the difference between these two, so you can see that this one is inheriting from Q main window, whereas the one that we normally do under graphical user interface would be inheriting from Q dialog. Like for instance, this one, you can see that it inherits from Q dialog. This is where we talked about how to build a user interface and then how to use signals and slots. And a dialog is simply something like that. That's a dialog, right? It's just not this one. That's a dialog. It is a title. You can close it, and you can then design a user interface on the dialog depending on what you're trying to create. Like the one we did in our last class, it had a spin box and a push button. That was our user interface. Now, when we come back and talk about menus, we are going to be using a different form, which is not the Q dialog we are used to. When we talk about menus and toolbars, we are now dealing with what is called a main window. A main window is more like your usual, if you open a software like, let's see if I can open something like Microsoft Word, for instance, or if you open Qt Creator, for instance, you see that it allows you to click menus like file, close, this. That is a main window. That is what a main window looks like. It is a fully functional, a full container that has these menus here. So when you talk about Q main window, this here is your main window. Unlike a dialog, you cannot put menu items here. You don't have these nice shortcuts here, and so on and so on. So this is an example of what a main window would look like. So it would have a title here, it would have a menu bar here, and then we would normally have a toolbar that would be sitting here. This one is sitting on the left, but we can have one sitting on top here, or it can sit on the right, or it can sit at the bottom. That is what a main window looks like. And your objective is to understand how to create these menu items that I'm clicking right now, and how to use these menu items, and then also the relationship between your toolbar and your menu items. So you'll see that sometimes I can just go and click debug here, which is this hammer, or I can just click debug from here, right? It has the same effect, whether I click it from here or I click it from here, right? It's doing exactly the same thing, which means the underlying command is actually one. But there are two ways you can access that command, which is either through your menu or through your toolbar, like in this particular case. So those are the things we need to talk about now. So how do you build a menu, and how do you respond to signals that are emitted by a menu? The same thing we did with push buttons, where we said, if you click a push button, something must happen. The same thing also goes here. If you click a menu item, something must happen. So the terminology we use, the right terms or words to use when referring to our menu here is, if we look, before we go there, if we look at this particular class, it's called my main window. So you can use any name you want, but in this case, we are using a class called my main window. So it doesn't have to be called my main window. What matters is the fact that it is inheriting from Q main window. You always put your macro there. I think by now you know why we use that macro. And also you must not be surprised that you see slots here. This is also something we discussed from our previous class. And here is our slot, which is called handle action. Now, let's go and look at the actual implementation of this class so far. This is where the constructor of my main window is being implemented. So this is our constructor, and this is the implementation of the constructor. Now, what we are trying to achieve is a menu. If I just draw part of it, that looks like, okay, let's do it this way. We've got our main window here, which has a title called My Editor here. And then we've got a toolbar underneath your, no, not a toolbar, we've got the actual menu underneath your title here, which is where your, so this will be your main sort of top section where the title of your window goes. And then here you now have your menu items, right? So under menu items, we want to have a menu item here. I don't know what we're going to call it. It's not very obvious from what I'm looking at right now. We'll come back and change it, but let's just call it file for now, right? And then if you click this file, menu item, we're going to see a drop down coming down, which has options like open, options like change, options like remove. So this is what we want to see if we click the file drop down, right? So this is what our drop down would then eventually look like when our menu is fully functional. So this is what we are aiming for. I hope this is clear what I'm trying to do here. We only have one menu item. We'll come back and change the actual name for this, but we're saying if you click file, this drop down shows. And this drop down is three options. It is open, change, and remove. Now, if we are talking about a menu, main window like this, I've just not drawn the right side. That is where you would have your maximize, your minimize, and your close buttons on the right, like the one I've just showed you. So this obviously is your title as usual. That's your window title. This here, these are your menu items. So this, and we refer to these as Q menus, right? These are your menu items, right? This in a very clear way. Okay, these are your menu items. And where these menu items are sitting here, this here is your menu bar, which is referred to as the Q menu bar. And these items on the drop down are referred to as Q actions, like that. So these are the classes we use in order to create such a user interface. That this is not a class. I'm just saying this is a title. But these are called Q menus. So this is a menu item. We could have put another one here if we wanted, like maybe edit, and another one here and another one there, like the normal menu that you would get, right? And these menus are sitting on a menu bar, which is this one. And if you click a menu item, it drops down, and what you look at here are Q actions, right? So that is what we are going to aim for. Now, how do you build such a user interface as this one? There are different ways of building this user interface, right? There are slightly different syntaxes that you can actually use to end up with this result that you're looking at. So if we look here, to set the title of your window, you still use the same function that we used in our previous class to set the title of our dialog, which is the set window title function. So you can see that if you go set window title, my editor is going to set the title of your window to my editor, like that. And now what we do here now is we are creating actions, which are these three actions. And the way to create each action, one of the ways is to do what has been done here, which is to go Q action. Remember, with graphical user interface components, we said everything is a pointer. Remember that. Do not forget that. When we build GUIs, we are going to be using pointers for every single component or for every single widget that we use in building that user interface. So we are going to create these three actions by just going Q action. It's a pointer. We call this one add action, right? And you go new Q action the same way. You just go Q push button, btn equals new Q push button, and then you specify the text that you want to display on the menu item, on the action. So here we want to open. And remember what I said, if you see the keyword this, it is used to specify that the current instance is the parent of this component. But we said if you are writing the code, it's optional, you can leave it out, right? And then we make another action code, and we store it in a variable called change action, and it's going to say change, which is this one. And we make another action called remove action, and the text is remove. So the actual pointer is called remove action, but the text it shows is removed. That is what you put in quotes here. Now, there's something funny that you guys are looking at, which is this ampersand that they are putting behind every character. This is used for shortcuts, right? Which means if you want that menu item to have a keyboard shortcut, by keyboard shortcuts, if you go like in most applications, like if you go on Microsoft Word or most of these applications that have a menu. So what I'm going to do now is on my keyboard, I'm going to press the, okay, wait, if you guys go up, come on, where is it? My keyboard is not responding. Okay, let's minimize this maybe for now. Right, so if I press the Alt key on my keyboard, right? If I press this button on my keyboard, what you're gonna see is this. Let me bring back my Qt. Where is it? So my keyboard is not responding for some reason. Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, let me find it. Okay, there it is. So if I press the Alt key on my keyboard, we're going to see something happen to these menu items here. And if you look carefully, I'm going to press it now. Yeah, I'm going to press it now. I don't know if you guys can see something that just happened on our menu items, like F has been underlined here, E has been underlined, B, D, A here, T here, and W. So that is what happens when I press the Alt key on my keyboard. Now, this is showing me that if I then press F, it's the same as clicking File. If I then press E, so if you go Alt E, it's going to drop down the Edit menu. If I go Alt B, it's going to drop down this. And you can try this with any application that is a menu, and you see that it behaves exactly the same like if you try with Microsoft Word or any other. Most of the applications do have this feature. So these are shortcuts. So if I go ahead and press Alt and T on my keyboard, you see that it drops down the Tools menu. I'm going to go ahead and press Alt W. You see, okay, let me just do that. Alt W, see it drops down the window. If I go Alt and then press F, and then you can see it drops down the File menu. In other words, Alt F is a shortcut that I can actually use, and I think they would also write it. It's not there. So that is what these ampersands you are looking at are for on your action. It's saying that if you press Alt and then O, you put the ampersand behind the character that you want to do the shortcut. So in other words, if you press Alt O, it's going to bring down this menu. If you press Alt C, it will bring down that one. And if you press Alt R, it will bring out. It will drop that menu there. So that is how what you use the ampersands for. It is they are used for defining shortcuts, which means if you press Alt on your keyboard, it will underline O here and C here and R here. And if you go Alt O, it will just drop down. It will just execute or click the open for you, or that, depending on which one you use. So, but what we have done now is we have created these three actions. We haven't put these actions anywhere. They are not on any menu. So obviously the next step would be to take these actions and put them on this file menu. We haven't even created this menu item because remember I said these are queue menus. So we have done only these queue actions, which are these three here. But in most cases, what you normally do here is if you want to build this whole user interface, you can start by going, let's just write the code very quickly. You can do something like this. So you can go queue menu like that. Let's call this one file. Then you can go queue menu bar. Then you can go queue menu bar dot add menu, if I'm not mistaken. And then you can specify the text you want on your menu bar. So this will create, so the menu bar function will create a menu bar for you, and then you call the dot add menu function of your menu bar, which creates a menu and puts it on that menu bar and returns it. So it would, and then you specify what you want it to be here, right? So this allows you to, you can also do this with your queue actions, but now let's keep it like that. So this is what creates this file here. Then I can then go ahead and create my three actions, which are these ones, like that, right? And then I can then take these actions. So assuming that I take this code as it is, and I put it here, I've got my three actions. You are also allowed to group your actions together, and we'll discuss why you might want to do that. But if you decide to do that, you create what is called a queue action group, right? So I can then go queue action group. Let's call it G equals new queue action group. So an action group is a collection of actions or a grouping of actions. Then what I can do is I can then put these actions into this group. So I can go G.add action, and then I put add action in here. And then I can also go G.add action. Then I can put change action in here. Come on. change action in here. And then I can also go G dot add action, which is remove action. And then I can, so I've put now my 3 actions into a group. Then I can take these actions and put them onto my menu, which is this one. So since I've put them in a group, I can just use this group to put them onto this menu here. So all I can do now is I can simply go file dot add actions, plural. And then I simply say G dot actions, like that. So this actions function will take all the actions from this group and put them here. The reason why you might want to put your actions onto a group is because if you want to put these actions onto something else, like a toolbar, you don't have to write these 3 lines of code. You can just, again, use your group. Whereas if I put these actions directly on my menu, I have to go file.add action, this one, then file.add action, this one, then file.add action, this one. Now, if I want to put these actions again on a toolbar, I have to repeat those same 3 lines. So imagine if you have 10 actions, that will be 20 lines of code. So if you just group them into a group, then every time you want to refer to those actions, you can just use your group. That is the whole point of using a Q action group. So once I've done this, it means I now have something like that, right? That is how you build a user interface for actions. So let's look at the questions. We'll keep referring here. We want to talk about how to create a toolbar. Okay, actually, it's here already, so we can just do it. A toolbar is like what I showed you. It's like a panel of shortcuts. Let's say we want a toolbar sitting right behind our menu here, right, with our icons and everything here. You define a toolbar using this code here that I'm highlighting. You go Q toolbar equals new Q toolbar, and then we can put this code here, right? So assuming that we have copied this code and it's now here, right? We have defined a toolbar, and you define which side you want your toolbar. You want it at the top, at the bottom, on the left, on the right, and so you use the add toolbar function. Add toolbar is like the set window title function. It's like the set layout function, right? So it says which toolbar are you going to assign to this into this main window. So it takes 2 arguments, which is where do you want it and what is the toolbar. So the toolbar is obviously this one, and you've got cute dot top toolbar area, left toolbar area, right toolbar area, and bottom toolbar area. So that is how you do it. It's an enum, an enumeration, or a predefined value of a sequence of values you can ever have. So that is what these values represent. These are all predefined in the Qt framework. So you just that is how you specify where you want it. And I say there's top, there's left, right, and bottom. The rest of the word remains the same, right? So that is how you then add your toolbar. Now, the last step you would also want to do is you want to put your actions on your toolbar so that you can have nice shortcuts on your toolbar, right? Like the ones that we were showing before. And to do that, what you then have to do is here, you can simply go toolbar, it's like that, toolbar dot add actions. And I can simply use my group G dot actions, like that. So you can imagine if I was doing this one action at a time, I would have had to repeat these 3 lines, putting these actions on this file, and then again these 3 lines, putting these actions onto this toolbar. But if I group them first, I can just use my group to attach my actions on my menu and to attach my actions on my toolbar. This normally is how you complete your menu. So sometimes they give you the code, sometimes it's partially done. Like this one, you see that they didn't do the menu for you, but they did the actions for you, but not the group. And then they did the toolbar for you, but not to put the actions on the toolbar. But completely, this code that I've highlighted in green here would be sitting. So this code, if we write everything together, this green block will be sitting here, right? Then you group your actions, you put your actions onto your group, and then this red box here would be sitting, this code here would be sitting here. So that is the complete code of how to build a menu. The only thing we haven't done yet is to define what happens if we click these menu items. So we haven't done our signals and our slots. Okay, so we'll do that with the question. Let's look at the question. What does it say? So let's go back and look at the, let's go and look at the question. Okay, let's try that. Perfect. So let's go back. Sorry. Let's come back here. And let's do this. Okay, so that is the actual question that we want to be looking at. So let's put that here for now. Okay, cool. So the question 5.3.1 then says, create a Q action group object to which the 3 given actions are added. This is what we've just done here. Here's our action group, and we have put our actions in our group, right? That is all they want. So this part is 5.3.1. Make an action group and put your actions on the group. Perfect. 5.3.2, create a menu titled edit. Okay, so this is actually called edit, not file. So let's just align that to our question. So we are saying this is called edit. So this should be called edit, which means we can come back and modify this line to be, we can call it edit, and here this should be edit. And then we can then go here and say edit. So this question which says create a menu titled edit with 3 open items, open, change, remove, use the Q action group in A to add the menu items, add edit to the menu, to the, add the edit menu to the main window. So this line creates the edit menu and it puts it on the main window and returns it. So this is very nice because it does it all in one go. Then we take our edit menu, then we put all our actions. So the answer for 5.3.2 is doing that and doing this. This is 5.3.1. So you are creating your menu item and then taking all the actions in your group and adding them to your menu item using the add actions function. So this is the part, it's all there. Then 5.3.2 is populate the toolbar object with control buttons, open, change, and remove. Use the Q action group. Again, now they are saying take your actions and also put them on your toolbar. Now this is this line, right? Which is toolbar.add actions, and then you put your actions, g.actions, right? So that is that. 5.3.4, have a connect statement so that actions are handled by the slot handle action. So every time you click any one of these actions, it emits a signal. Now your job is to understand what is the name of that signal, because remember when we were dealing with push buttons, we said that they emit a signal called clicked. It was a clicked signal. This is the signal that is emitted by a push button, but it's not the same for menu items. Actions emit a signal called triggered. That is the signal they emit. So the rest remains the same. So you are saying that if you click an action, it's going to emit this signal, and you want to connect this signal to your slot handle action. Now, here's one thing I want you to understand, and listen to this very carefully, right? For this part. If you have a menu item, a menu that looks like that, you have 2 options. You can connect these actions one by one to your slot, which means you connect this one, you connect this one, you connect this one. So you are saying if this one is clicked, do this slot. If this one is clicked, do this slot. If this one is clicked, do this slot. So these actions that you see here all emit a triggered signal when they are clicked. In the same manner, now this is where I want you to hear me. If you click open here, this action open is going to emit a triggered signal, right? This menu item edit will also emit a triggered signal. The difference is between the signals emitted by this guy and this guy is that this one is just a triggered signal that says I have been triggered. But the one that is emitted by edit is still a triggered signal, but it also says, but for which one? Because remember, what I'm trying to say now is if we have edit sitting here, and here's our drop down, you've got open, change, remove. Here's open, change, remove. The moment you click any one, so let's say you click change here, with that one click, this will emit a signal code triggered, right? At the same time, this will also emit a signal code triggered because you triggered its action. You clicked one of its actions, so it will also emit. But the difference between this one and this one is this one also has one more information. Which action? Because at this level, this one will say, you have triggered me, but this is the actual action that you clicked. So this menu item will always emit the triggered signal, but which specifies which action has been clicked, whereas these ones only emit a triggered signal, but don't specify the action, just says, oh, I've been triggered. So if you then look at your slot, and this is how they do it for all their questions, right? Even your assignment. The slot receives the action that has been clicked. So you would see that your slot here is one argument. Unlike the slot that we did with our previous question where we said it's normally just always void, this one is not. It receives the action that has been clicked. So the way you do your connect is you are saying, if we follow the same format we talked about last time, we said the syntax for a connect is you write connect. So you go connect. Who is sending the signal? Then you say, oh, it's our edit menu. What is the signal, right? So you go signal, then you say, oh, it's triggered. I don't know if it's double R or just one R, whatever. But this is also sending which queue action has been clicked. So you put that in brackets. And then you say, where is the slot? It's in this class. And what is the slot? Your slot is called handle. It's called handle action. Let's write this down. Let me move this down here. Your slot is called handle action, and it receives the queue action that has been clicked. So this would be, sorry, this would be queue action that has been clicked. So you just do it like that. That is how you do your connect statement. And this is the last piece when it comes to dealing with menus and toolbars. So the connect statement, you should still know. The only special thing with this connect is that your signal has an argument, which is what action has been clicked, because that action is then sent to your slot. So that your signal here and your slot do have sort of like arguments in here, because that is how signals and slots communicate. At this level, we don't really touch a lot on signals and slots. That's why I'm not going a little bit. I'm not going deeper into signals and slots. But just know that when it comes to dealing with toolbars and actions and slots, your action, your signal at this level emits a triggered signal, and it sends the action that was clicked, and your slot receives that action, which means in your action, you can then say, if it was open, then do this. If it was changed, then do this. If it was removed, then do this. The beauty of this is that you don't have to implement 3 slots, or you don't have to do 3 connect statements. You only do 1 connect statement, which means anytime you click any one of these, it will still execute this function. And this function will receive which action has been clicked, which means in the function, you will have an if statement that says, if it was this one, then do that. If it was this one, then do that. If it was this one, then do that. So the one that we are connecting is actually this one, which is at the menu level because it sends the action. Then we only need to do 1 connect statement for the menu item. That is the last piece of information you need to know when it comes to dealing with menus and toolbars. And that's it. So you obviously have to go and look at a lot of questions. And I think I'm going to send you, like I promised, I'll send you a few memos for a few papers that you can look at and use those to study. And so that is going to be the main objective of the next week, which is starting from tomorrow going forward. We're going to be looking at random questions. So you guys should be reaching out and saying, can we look at this question? Can we do this one? Can we go into this paper and do this question? Whatever you want, because as you can see, we have covered the ground in terms of everything we need to talk about. So the next talking point or item is design patterns, which is very easy because it's all theory. So we are at the end of our class. So obviously we have another session that is coming after this one, which means let's take a break, obviously, and wait maybe for about 10 or so minutes. And then when we come back, we can then talk about design patterns, which should be our last discussion point. And then you guys can go and practice until you've practiced, and you keep on practicing and practicing and practicing. So yeah, that's it. So let's meet again in a few minutes. For now, we can take a break. See you in a bit.